My name is Susanna Childress, and I welcome you this evening on behalf of the English department, of which I'm a junior faculty member, and on behalf of our co-sponsors for this event, the Political Science Department, the Cultural Affairs Committee, the Office of International and Multicultural Education, and the GROW initiative, which, as many of you know, is a campus-wide initiative that fosters diverse relationships and deepens cross-cultural competence to achieve an inclusive campus community. The title for our event, as many of you also know, is Why Would a White Man March? Reflections on social justice, protest, and what it really means to be an ally. This subject matter, or matters, these topics, for surely they are distinct, complex, overlapping. The subject matters we'll dive into tonight are both timely and important. These may seem, I've got a lot of creative writers in the audience, so timely and important may seem generic, like throwaway qualities, toss-off words that people like me on stage are compelled to use in introducing an event that they coordinated because they too, I too, like all of us, want, sometimes desperately, to be timely and important. There are probably several other events on campus that are timely and important, right? That you could have chosen to be at. But the timeliness and the importance of our subject matters tonight are something of great distress for me. I don't want in 2015 to have to convince people that white privilege exists insidiously. I don't want in 2015 to have achieved the incredible milestone of lowering the Confederate flag at South Carolina's state capitol, or that students on this campus have recently displayed that same flag. I don't want in 2015 for there to be any more voices protesting inequality to be shushed, to be silenced. I don't want any more black or brown bodies lying in the streets for hours. I don't want unarmed children of color gunned down. I don't want the subject matters tonight to be timely. I don't want them to be important. That they are timely and important is a signal. Anyone vigilant, anyone paying attention knows this signal has been sounding for years upon years upon years, but at a frequency that some of us, many of us, have not attuned our ears to hear. We don't have to hear it because we are not affected by it. We choose not to hear it, and then we quibble over whether it's really a sound at all. You know, maybe your ears are just too sensitive. Try not hearing so clearly at so many frequencies, or try not taking everything you hear so personally. In her recent book, Citizen, poet Claudia Rankine asks this question over and over. Did I hear that right? Did he just say that? Did she just say that? Did I hear that right? Whether it's microaggression, also known via a video on YouTube as diet racism, or whether it's blatant acts of racism like we'll hear about tonight, we have to start listening. Every last one of us. Our speaker tonight has his ears attuned on an individual and a regional and a national level. Andrew McFadyen-Ketchum is a writer, an educator, and an editor who's been an activist in one form or another since he was in high school. He served as campaign manager for Howard Dean, Tennessee, as an election observer in Ukraine's Orange Revolution in 2004, and more recently has been working with the NAACP and Black Lives Matter. He is an editor, founder of the website poemoftheweek.org, and author of a book of poems. I don't know if you can see it. It's really lovely. The book is entitled Ghost Gear, and it will be for sale afterwards. He's also a lecturer of creative writing and composition at the University of Colorado, and he has a strong online presence with audio and videos of his reading and presentations at andrewmk.com. Bringing Andrew to campus tonight was an unforeseen opportunity and blessing. It came together in a matter of 3 weeks. So I want to take a second now, because afterwards we're sometimes itching to get out of our seats. I want to take a second now to thank people by name who have been key in making this evening happen. Sarah Barr and Ernest Cole in the English department, Vanessa Green as one of GROW Initiative's directors, Annie Dandavati in political science, Alfredo Gonzalez as the Dean of International and Multicultural Education, Michelle Van Denend in dining services, who coordinated the treats that we'll be having. That's what we call them in my house, treats, that we'll be having afterwards. And Melissa Bazzani and Jake Warner, who are videotaping tonight's event. They were called at the very last second, and I'm so grateful that they're helping us out. We do this in my class. Will you give them snappies? All those people can help us out. Last bit from me, and then I'm going to turn it over to Andrew. I want to warn you that there's some strong language in tonight's presentation, some offensive language. It's raw and it's real. It will break your heart, some of the things you'll be seeing and hearing, so prepare your hearts. And now, I'd like to welcome to Hope College and to this stage, Andrew McFadyen-Ketchum. Please help me in welcoming him.
So, we marched. From Ferguson to the incinerated public storage, past 747s rising from the runways and falling like breath from the orange burn of the darkling sky, past Boeing and UPS and Nestle Purina, and of all things imaginable, the Monsanto headquarters, its windows shining in the morning light like teeth. So we marched past the Ferguson Police Department, where state troopers and county sheriffs and the National Guard and an all-white militia that called themselves the Oath Keepers, armed with M4s, AR-15s, and batons, and their official uniforms atop armored vehicles. And behind barriers and behind masks, we marched past the green, manicured lawns of the University of Missouri, St. Louis, just a mile north of the shooting, and on across the St. Louis County line, where the news choppers banked back to the east, and the attractive blonde on-site reporters and their cameramen turned back to the Canfield apartments, hungry for another riot. For though Wolf Blitzer and Geraldo Rivera and all the others just like them preach the peaceful, they will not cover the peaceful. So we marched southwest along Highway 67, and under overpasses and through hail and freezing wind and hard rain and through rays of the hothouse sun that broke through the clouds and elicited from our lips, hallelujah. There was injustice. There was intolerable cruelty. So we marched. Spirituals spiriting from our lips like hymnals, and roadside bombs as we climbed the long hills, as we descended the dotted yellow lines, as we split the canyons and entered the valleys and learned one by one each other's names. Jenny, the attorney from Baltimore, who I call my sister. Shamiqua, the postal worker from Ohio who wrapped her dreads atop her head like a crown. Kevin Miles, who mapped our route and egged us on when our chants fell silent. Jamia Adams, who taught me how to hashtag on the road. The Michigan boys who drove through the night in a rust bucket Dodge Stratus to join us in Rosebud. President Brooks, who grew up not a mile from my parents' house. Christina and Adam, the revolutionaries I couldn't help but argue with. Dimitri, the kid who lived cross river in a house sans plumbing, who I came to call Shoeless Joe, for he marched discalced, which is just a fancy way of saying he marched no shit without shoes. There was a murder. There was a killing. There was another child born to the opposite skin. There was a kid who stole. There was yet another officer we dared not question, despite the video. There was a bomb. There was an assassination. There was a factory releasing chemicals bordering the projects. There was yet another gentrified neighborhood. There was a hanging. There was a toy gun. In Cleveland, in Denver, in Dayton, in Nashville, in Birmingham, on Staten Island, in Memphis, on a balcony, in a hotel, in a ballroom, in Colorado Springs, beneath the steps of a church, in a prison, in a factory, working the line, carrying the white woman's bags. The list goes on and on. So we marched. From Mike Brown's body etched in white chalk on the black street to Ellisville, to Manchester, to Gray Summit, to Union, through Beaufort, through Leslie, to Gerald, to Rosebud, where the sheriff announced, not through my town, but we did not obey. And on to Drake, to Lynn, to Loose Creek, across the Osage, across the Missouri, across the Gasconade, past colleges and VFWs and cemeteries, big Kmarts and McDonald's and Chick-fil-A's where we did not stop to eat. And past pastures roamed by beautiful bulls, and past moose lodges and schools where recess was canceled. The children hidden away from sight in basements and cafeterias. And past farmers and bankers and good Christians and mothers and husbands and welfare receivers and antique dealers and class presidents and preachers who stood on the medians and in front yards and on the shoulders of highways and on the roofs of their banks with cameras with zoom lenses that looked like gun sights and rifle scopes, yelling aspersions and holding handmade signs that read things like, "Can't fix stupid. Don't fight a cop and you won't get shot. Go home, get a job. Shoot thieves. All this for one dead." The list goes on and on. So we marched by day and slept by night, side by side on church floors and on the bright shellac of gymnasium hard courts, and stretched across the aisle between seats in the bus when our legs could march no more. And when we slept, we had our dreams of our homes, of our pets, of our mothers and fathers and sisters and husbands and wives, of our little ones who we heard through the haze of sleep calling, "Come home, come home." But we could not come home. So we marched. And as we marched, we often dreamed on our feet of our God, of our gods, of our Allahs and Brahmins, of Jehovah and Rapha, the Alpha and the Omega, of Al-Dia, our Lord, Amen, and of slain children. and of our own childhoods, of first loves and once lovers, of mistakes we made and mistakes we were still making. So we marched in our Ray-Bans and Ray-Ban knockoffs, in our Nikes and steel-toed and Payless, blue jeans, pantsuits, now jeans, Gatorade, hot cocoa, under umbrellas and wearing backpacks, wool caps covering our red ears, sunscreen in winter, dress shoes, flats, down vests and hoodies and sweaters, blisters wrapped in duct tape. Some of us former athletes, some of us marathoners, some underweight, some obese, listening to headphones, hip-hop and rock and roll, having conversation, arguing, laughing, crying. The phone call after Rosebud, after Tamir Rice's body was lowered for eternity into the cold Cleveland ground, that informed us the illegal chokehold and a history of violence that killed Eric Garner would not be indicted. Middle America. Our breath flying up in great plumes of smoke. The question I kept asking and could not ignore, how could there be so much ugliness in the face of so much beauty? How could there be so much beauty in the face of so much ugliness? So we marched. And when I could not sleep, I watched us dream. And the dull light of the street that stole its way through the windows of our sanctuaries. And just last night I dreamed I was marching all over again. The street peeling from beneath my feet like the skin of an animal. Because there was injustice. Because there was intolerable cruelty. Because Mike Brown, because of a toy assault rifle in a Walmart, because Sandra Bland, because of lack of training, because Trayvon Martin, because hoodies, because senseless fear, because Tamir Rice, because Eric Garner, because Jesse Hernandez, because Freddie Gray, because the list goes on and on. So we marched. Because Baltimore, because Ferguson, because Watts, because Shane, because Black Wall Street, because the Lower Ninth Ward, because May 13, 1965, Philadelphia, where the MOVE organization was on the move. Because minimum sentencing means a joint in the pocket could mean 10 years in the joint. Because my students still do not believe. Because my friends still do not believe. Because no matter what code I'm switching, so few of us are listening. The list goes on and on. That is its power. The list needs no listener. The list is flesh and ignorance. The list is America. The list is your freedom. The list is bullet holes and holy crosses, the Alpha and the Omega. The list does not end. It goes on and on and on. So we marched. Thank you. Okay, so how's this working out? Can you hear me okay? Mm-hmm. Not too much breath? All right. I feel breathy. So before anything else happens, Susanna, I'm going to get emotional, but thank you so much. A friend of mine who I met on the march, one of the Michigan boys named Phil, convinced me to come to Detroit to see what's going on in Detroit, which is bizarre. I've been all over this country. I've never seen anything in America like it. And we decided we were going to put together an event. If anyone's going to be in Detroit on Friday or wants to come to Detroit on Friday, come to Detroit on Friday. For an event called Words for Water, we are putting together an event with poets, MCs, African drummers, live art, all sorts of cool stuff Facebook me, and I can show you how to get there. Friday night around 8 or something, I don't know. We'll go pretty late. It's BYOB, all right? Road trip. And when I said, okay, I'm going to do it, I bought the ticket, and I said, okay, I'm going to see if I can't build something around this. And I emailed 30 people. And Susanna was one of the very few to say, I think we can do something. And she was emailing me at 2 in the morning, her time, no, my time, which is 4 in the morning. I don't know what you were doing. And there were lots of little details, as these things are. I know 3 weeks seems like, to a lot of you who have never put something together like this, like nothing. It's almost a miracle that it happened. So thank you so much. It's neat that we're together now doing this. And thank you to everybody else who made this happen. And then most of all, thank you to you guys. There are a lot of you here. This is fantastic. Every presenter's worst nightmare is the opposite of this, and it has happened to me. It's happened to us all, right? Okay, so this presentation is going to be in 3 parts. Part 1 is going to be the answer to the question, why would a white man march? And the question, it's an interesting question because I get asked this question all the time by people marching, by people who meet me, by people who don't like me very much. It's a question that comes up all the time. The second part is going to be the story of our march to Missouri, which there are 2 marches I'm going to be talking about with similar names. The Journey for Justice is the march that we took from Ferguson to Jefferson City, Missouri, which is the capital of Missouri. St. Louis is not the capital. The second march is America's Journey for Justice, which was a 1,002-mile march over 46 days that started in Selma, Alabama on August 1 and ended in Washington, D.C. on September 16. 1,002 miles. And our leader died 2 days out of D.C. You haven't heard a whip about this in the media, huh? Okay. You're going to hear about it today. The third part is going to be a Q&A, and we'll have rolling pictures and stuff like that. My hope is that we have a vibrant Q&A. My hope is that you will challenge me. My hope is that I'll be able to answer your question. Okay, so why in the world do this? Does anyone know what in-group, out-group theory is? And yes, I'm actually asking for participation. Does anybody know what that is? Raise your hand. Okay, I saw you first. What do you think it is? She's like, oh darn, yes, you. I'm going to hit you with this little laser. And you, yes. No? All right, does somebody want to help her out? You, sir.
It's the theory that you are part of an in-group, everybody else is part of an out-group, and that the out-group is homogenous and your group is diverse.
Yeah, pretty good. It's what it sounds like. Okay, we organize ourselves into groups. All right, in-group. As in-group, it's a social group to which a person psychologically identifies as being a member. Okay. Out-group sounds pretty obvious. An out-group is a social group to which an individual does not identify. We're going to watch a little video now. I didn't test the sound. I forgot to do that, so we'll see how this goes. It might blow your ears off, so hold on. Let's try not to do that to you. I got it. Sorry for the choppiness.
George Abbott School in Guildford, Surrey, has nearly 2,000 pupils who all live within 10 miles of here and are from mostly similar backgrounds. Like all school children, they're divided into groups for lessons, but come break time, they divide themselves.
If you just look across the playground, you'll see that everyone pretty much looks the same. They're all wearing the same uniform, they're the same age, they all have the same accents, they're all the same colour. There's nothing much to distinguish them. So one of the things that's really important to them is to make some differences, to give themselves a sense of being distinctive. And the way they do that is to join different groups and to mark out very important but small differences between each of the groups.
We've been named as the Indie Girls, there's four of us. We all wear the same stuff, for instance, play music. There's another group of girls, another large group of girls who are very well recognised, very well known, called the Tracy's or the Charts.
People call us like the Tarts girls, but I don't know, it's because we don't, I don't know, we like to make us to look after.
We're not subtle, are we?
If you wear socks, you have to roll them down.
Skirts got to be skin colour tight, whatever. Skin colour tight.
Shirt in at the front, out the back.
Yeah, then it comes out a little bit at the back. No jumpers unless you're absolutely freezing, otherwise, because that's what the indie chicks do.
The grunges will wear baggy clothes, reputation of being dirty.
The grunges are more like into snowboarding and skateboarding and stuff, like extreme sports, and so kind of more cutting edge.
Up in the cages, where they play football, there's another group of boys called the Garys, who are like the opposite to the grunges.
All the Garys hang out here and they hang out down there. This is sort of like our place and that's theirs.
The grunges won't go anywhere near the Garys. They make them look as if they like football and they like to wear like gold chains and all that lot. And it's the same way around. The Garys wouldn't want to be near the grunges because it makes them look as if they smell.
What's this? Punch?
13 is a really important age when children are really beginning to figure out who they're going to be as adults. They're figuring out, what should I wear? What should I listen to? What should I be interested in? How should I behave? They're moving from that comfortable time of childhood when they could just do what all the children do to now a kind of transitional period, and there's a lot of uncertainty around for them.
There's even more uncertainty if you're someone like Anna, who's what the rest of the playground call a loner, someone who's not part of a group.
I'm independent and everything, but I do sometimes feel that it would be nice to be in a group, to have somebody else always there to protect you, to stand up for you. I get names called at me, but it doesn't really bother me that much, because if they feel that they have to pick on me because I'm not like them, then it's their own problem.
Anna's proud of her independence and ability to mix, but without realising it, even she's part of a group of loners.
Sometimes these groups are real groups, like these ones out here, like the grunges, for example, and they all sit together and they do everything together. Other times they can be groups that are more kind of in our heads. So some of the people out here, for example, might be treated as loners or counted as loners, but you'll find that they themselves have connections that give them that sense of security, the sense that they know what they're doing the right kind of thing.
The loners have bonded just like the grunges, the Garys, the indies and the tarts, and they display all the hallmarks of group mentality, like loyalty and competition. Anna even says it herself.
They're really nice people and everything, and they've got such nice personalities, it can actually be better than some of the people in groups.
So instinctive and subconscious is this need to belong, that we're loyal to groups without realising it, and they change our behaviour in powerful ways.
Okay. And that's in a bunch of British white kids. How many divisions did we see? Right? And these are divisions that people will get very serious about. Okay. So what's this got to do with what we're talking about? Well, I want you to take 2 minutes. You can do this in your brain, you can do it on a piece of paper, you can do it on your phone. I want you to think about what are some of the groups that you belong to, and this is just a little list. So I'm going to time you in my head. All right, 2 minutes. Think about the ways that you categorize yourself. Think about the ways that your group categorizes itself. 30 seconds. Ten seconds. All right, what do we got? Somebody just shout something out by some way they categorize themselves. I'm the only one who will know who yells it, so.
Female.
Female, all right. Male. What else?
Age.
Sort of old. Really old. I've got family here, so it's okay. What else?
Christian.
Straight, Christian. Okay, what else?
Upbringing.
Upbringing.
College student.
College student.
Phelps Scholar.
Phelps Scholar. Not me. What else? Let's get negative. How do we negatively divide ourselves?
Not religious.
A-religious.
Not a drug user.
Say again?
Not a drug user.
Not a drug user. Is that negative? What kind of music do you guys listen to? Who listens to hip hop? Who listens to rap? Who listens to country? Okay. Who sees a black person and gets a little wary? Come on now. That's what we're going to do in here is we're going to be honest. Almost all of us do this. It's been proven scientifically. It's almost impossible. It's not our fault, okay? But it's a real thing that happens. How many people see a gay person and sort of move this way? A lot of us do. A lot of us do. Okay, so this is me. Good-looking kid. I don't really know what happened. How many of you in here are solidly part of a group? Raise your hand. How many of you in here are loners? Raise your hand. How many of you are what I am calling a drifter? That would be me, someone who moves from group to group to group. Right. Okay. So the reason that I think I marched and am continuing now to do this work is I grew up in a very rough, working class, mixed race, extraordinarily racist neighborhood. That's what my first book is about. I, however, oddly, in that neighborhood had educated parents. My mom was a special ed teacher for 25 years. She's now a political organizer. My dad was getting his PhD when I was a kid in psychology. He then determined that he should repudiate sort of true. He should repudiate tenure. So we didn't have that kind of money, but we had an educated household. My parents were married. No one that I knew in my neighborhood had parents that were married, not any of them. It's a mark of poverty. And when I was a kid, I used the N-word because that's what you called black people when you were with white people. I didn't know what it meant. And one day, my dad overheard me and he said, "I'm confused. What are you doing? I'm a civil rights activist. You're using a word you can't use this." And I don't know what's it mean. He said, "It's a word you don't use." So I went to my peers and I said, "Hey, don't use that word." What do you think happened? I was no longer welcome in my own neighborhood. I also didn't go to church. I was raised atheist. That is slowly but surely, it's hard to admit, changing for me. Much of that change is a result of these marches. They've made me more of a believer. One day I went to school and I said, "Hey, did you guys know that God isn't real?" Okay, it's funny now, but when you get to know me a little bit more, if you look underneath both my eyebrows, I've got deep scars, fists. I've got lots of scars on my knuckles because I had to fight back. So I never had a group. I was always a floater or a drifter. I was always moving around. So when I saw what was going on, it was not a scary thing to go march with a bunch of people that were not my color. The scary stuff came later. And this is an advantage that I have. And I didn't know I had it until recently. Because what happens when you're in group is you've got this in-group knowledge, contact, experience, and you develop a recognition of realistic threats, symbolic threats, which, by the way, extraordinarily outnumber the real ones. Most of the stuff you're afraid of, just ignore it. It's not real, okay? Anxiety in the group, negative stereotyping within the group and outside the group. This leads to prejudice, and this leads to the bugaboo, bad behavior, okay? Good behavior too, I suppose, but a lot of time it leads to bad behavior. All right, so here's my theory. We need out-group activism, and we see quite a few out-group activists in this image. That's me back there. This is the last day of the Journey for Justice. We're coming into Jefferson City right here. This is Phil right here, my buddy who lives in Detroit. You'll see a couple of outgroupers, a couple outgroupers here, 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 here. Not a whole lot of us, but not bad, actually. Not bad at all. On America's Journey for Justice, we had quite a few white people. We had a rabbi who marched with us every single day. Not one rabbi, but a different rabbi every single day. They carried a handwritten Torah on a scroll every single mile. Muslims carried it, Jews carried it, Christians carried it, I carried it. All right? When people see a march for civil rights with a lot of black people in it, they think, well, yeah, of course, a bunch of black people marching for their rights. Who cares? Okay, if they're that type of person. Not everybody thinks that way. When they see in that group white people, people of all other colors, people that announce their sexual orientation with their clothing, whatever, there is a power there that otherwise doesn't exist. And this is absolutely crucial. How many people in here would say they're activists of some sort? Okay, more than 50% of you. I'll bet you most of you are activists within your group. I'll give you $20 that says that most of you, and we're not going to do any stats on that because I don't want to lose my $20, are in group. Okay? That's great. You should do that. Why don't you also get out of your group and show the people who see you that the people who care about this are not necessarily going to directly be benefited. That this is something that benefits us all. Now, a lot of people have said, yeah, Andrew, that's really cool, but that's hard, man. You can't just get into a group, you can't just walk in. Well, actually, you literally can. Okay? Here's how this works. Nice little graph chart. You're the new member. You're given a task. The task I was given was march. You know how hard it is to march? It kind of looks a lot like this. This is it. Okay, it's a little more complicated. You got to sleep and eat and stuff, but they do that for you. This is it. I have an extraordinarily complicated and busy life. This is like the best thing ever. Just walking. That's it. Okay? Now, if you do a poor job, which, believe it or not, there are marchers who do a poor job, not because they don't march well, but because they, well, we won't go there, okay? If they do a poor job, they're not going to get in. If you do a great job, which again, it's like this, okay? Pretty simple. Then you're in. That's it. That's it. It's that easy. In this case. It can be more difficult in others. And within the civil rights movement, there are people who are not interested in me being part of their group. And when that signal is sent, okay, just take a step back. There are other opportunities. You're going to live, most of you, a long time. You're going to live longer than you want to live. Okay? If you get rejected by one group, move on to the next one and give them a chance to breathe. It's not that hard to do. Okay, so that's the answer to the question. Outgroup activism. I Googled it. I only found one source. Okay? That's a joke because it's bad research, right? But I don't know that, so I haven't done enough research on this yet, but I think that outgroup activism is a fairly new idea. Okay? Okay, second question. So why this movement in particular? I went to Virginia Tech. Hokies! That's my boy. Did you look familiar? Whoa, okay, pull left out. All right, learning as we go here. Went to Virginia Tech, where the largest slaughter of human life in one sitting in America, other than 9/11, happened. And I'm not a gun person. My mom's got that covered, literally. Okay, but I could have joined that movement. Why this one? Well, so this summer, stuff like this started to happen. Now, let me preface all of that with this did not start to happen recently. This has been going on for a very long time, in the entire history of the United States. Right? Now, what this is these images. Okay, things have changed. Now we have the ability to capture this stuff live, see it happen. Okay? And we started to see images like this. We saw a video like this.
But by standing in it today, I did nothing. I did not sell nothing. Because every time you see me, you want to harass me, you want to stop me, you want to cigarette. I'm minding my business, officer. I'm minding my business. Please just leave me alone. I told you the last time, please leave me alone. Don't touch me, please. Don't touch me. Put your hand behind your
Once again, police beating up on people. Back up right here. Back up to get on that step. Okay, back up. All he did was break up a fight. And this is what happens for breaking up a fight. This is crazy.
Is anybody noticing that they're blacking out cuss words? We saw things like this in response. So I took to Facebook. This is what a lot of nice white people do. I said, God damn, I'm so disappointed in us. In the legal system, in the justice system, in my friends and countrymen and women calling protesters animals. I have lost multiple friends over this. In all the hard work and loss of life that has come from this struggle, for all we've gone through as a nation to try to make ourselves better, to arrive at this. Of all places I thought I'd be in my life as an American in the 21st century, I've always known this was possible, but always believed we were better. Where did we go so wrong? And good God, what can we do? At that time, I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what there was to do. How many people feel that way? Raise your hand. Yeah, just about everybody feels this way. Believe it or not, there's a shit ton of stuff you can do. It's not that hard to find. And it got started when my wife, the next day, texted me and said, have you heard about this march from Ferguson to Jefferson City with the NAACP? And I said, no, I don't know anything about it. I've never been to an NAACP meeting. I've heard about it all my life, because my parents were involved with them for a long time, but I never really thought about it. I looked, it was starting 2 days later. I got on Expedia. I found a flight for $174 the next day, round trip. So I bought it. All right, and this is what I had to say on Facebook the next day. I'll be marching all next week with the NAACP's Journey for Justice, Ferguson to Jefferson City. I'm marching for 3 reasons. The government's response in Ferguson and across the country to protests are a serious threat to our democracy. Democracy is about showing up. Those of us who can, must. I need to repeat that. It's about showing up. Very few of you are showing up. Very few of us are showing up. The laws of our land no longer serve and protect the people. I'm realizing that this part was called naivete. Okay? That's been the status of this country for quite some time. This is not about one person or event. This is about America and being an American. This is not about black or white. I was very wrong about that. This is not about good cops or bad cops. This is about our system and its abuse of power. This is about privilege and how those of us with privilege use it. I'll do my best to post here while we're marching. I want to go back a slide. How many likes did it get? 51. How many likes did, hey, I'm going to do something about it, get? 17. Tells you something. Okay, so I arrived in Ferguson. This is the Canfield Apartments. Mike Brown lay right here for 4.5 hours. 4.5 hours in the middle of the street. Okay? I don't know how long he was not covered with a sheet. But 4.5 hours he was laying there. Right there. This is the Canfield Apartments. He didn't live in these apartments. He lived, this away. But this was his neighborhood. A few things I want you to notice. Look at this railing. Look at the street. Look at the grass. Does this look like a ghetto to you? This is not a ghetto. Okay? This is not a ghetto. So media, you are wrong. Not a ghetto. Okay? I also want you to notice how small the street is. St. Louis is known for this, having thin streets. This kid was shot 20 feet from an apartment here. There's an apartment right over here. I mean, he was shot right in the middle of where people live and sleep and eat and raise their children. Right there. This guy is Darren, unfortunately named. When I showed up, it was literally him and me, 9 a.m. Saturday. The march was starting around noon that day, but at that point, I really didn't know much. I knew that I wanted to go. I had RSVP'd. That was it. I had nary a contact in the NAACP, didn't know anyone in Canfield or Ferguson, nothing. I just showed up. I want to show you a few more images. This is obviously Mike Brown's memorial. I believe this is still there. This is across the street. This has been burned down several times and reassembled. He's preaching, man. This guy could talk. This guy could really move. You can see how close, this is a good picture because it gives you that perspective. I'm not a great football player, but I could hit that with a football if I wanted to from where Mike Brown was shot. That's a pretty serious, that's a problem. So all morning people were slowly trickling in, giving some love to Mike Brown. People were crying. People were talking about life. People were arguing about how to change things. People were quoting our great leaders. Many of the businesses nearby were boarded up, right? Because they didn't want to get windows broken or get it burned down. So a bunch of artists came out and made art out of it. You should Google this. It's really amazing. I didn't get enough good pictures of it. Most of these pictures, by the way, are mine, not all of them. And I've got video of this that you should see. You can just put, look for my name on YouTube and you'll find it. So this is pretty cool stuff. As the crowd gathered and had some media show up, you know, a little bit of media coming. Actually, quite a bit of media was there. These guys start marching around. This is Sam. He's one of the rioters. The rioters mark themselves by wearing these washcloths over their faces. Not to hide their faces, but to avoid the tear gas. It doesn't work, but, you know, something. This is a bicycle, a big motorcycle troop gang. I'm not sure what the proper term is. You can't really see it very well. It's not a great photo. About 300 of them came in, rumbled in, all sorts of commotion. The leader got off his bike and held his fist up, and the whole place went silent. We held a moment of silence for 4.5 minutes for Mike Brown's 4.5 hours that he lay in the street, unattended to. Here, the NAACP has shown up. Apologies for not the greatest photo quality on some of these. But you can see we got quite a crowd now. It's about noon. And then we went off. We took off. From the poem, that's Jenny, and that's Shaniqua. All right? And I'm just going to show you a few pictures, just how beautiful it was. Missouri in the winter, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful place. It's a beautiful state. It's also a really crooked state. Really weird history. Really weird history. Gorgeous. Look at that. Okay, so I'm going to explain a little bit about how this worked. This is the first day of the march. I'm somewhere in there. This is Charles, who's holding this thing. He made this out of siding that he found in Ferguson. Pretty neat. This is President Brooks, President Cornell Brooks of the NAACP. And the way this worked was, we had a bus with us the entire time. So we'd march along. We started here in Canfield Apartments. We marched about here the first day, so we only had 4 or 5 hours. And then the bus was behind us the whole time. It took us to a church somewhere over here. Now let me tell you, these marches put me in a lot of churches. Okay. Thought I learned the first time. Put me in a lot of churches. Slept on church floors, stuff like that. Changed things for me a little bit. So the next day, we probably marched to here or something like that. And then the bus took us back here, slept, and then the next day we picked up here, marched probably about here, marched about 20 miles a day. All right? And so we leapfrogged ourselves. Brilliant. I had no idea how this was going to work. I thought, we're sleeping in a field? Oh, what we're doing. Okay, I was glad we weren't sleeping in the field. All right, and then by the time we got to about here, then we took the bus to a historic black college and to a church here, and then came back, and then and you get the idea. It was quite a sight to get to Jefferson City before we got to Jefferson City. All right, when we were tired, like me, you just slept on the bus. All right, that's duct tape for our feet. Lots of blisters, you just got to duct tape those things up and keep going. To give you a sense of who the people are, this is President Cornell Brooks. This is my boy Jonathan McKinney. This is Quincy Bates. This is Kevin Miles. He's the primary organizer for both marches. And that's the funny-looking guy who's talking to you right now. And every night that we went back to Ferguson or back to St. Louis, I couldn't sleep. I was too amped up. So I went down to Ferguson and went to see what was going on. There were National Guard on every single street corner, big armored vehicles. There were dudes on top of these armored vehicles with machine guns doing this. No joke. No joke. It's the weirdest thing I've ever seen. I will tell you though, the National Guard, you gotta give those guys credit, because a lot of these protesters lot of people here, and you can't see it in the photo, but there's one guy getting into a National Guardsman's face. They will get right up in a National Guardsman's face and just spit venom, and those National Guardsmen are like this. They will not do anything they shouldn't do. Got to give them credit for that. Very intense. Every single night. Very intense. Seeing this picture this big is bringing me back. That's almost life size. Oh yeah, you can see them up there. This is real. This is real stuff. Okay? They don't use handcuffs, they use zip ties. Faster. Alright? And these guys are walking around like right here. They're right next to you. Okay? One itchy finger away from an absolute disaster. Again, let's give them credit where they do deserve it. Most law enforcement are wonderful people. Every street corner. All over the place. In front of every store. It's not just National Guard. It's also the police. Now, this isn't a great picture, but there's a whole bunch of police over here, too. This is the Ferguson Police Department. This is the barrier on the street. Here's the street. Right over here are about 300, 400 people screaming their heads off. Wearing the Guy Fawkes masks, stuff like that. Anarchy, that sort of thing. Yeah, you can kind of see this one. This is a panorama. So those are all the police. And that's barely, it doesn't even look like there's that much. But trust me, there's about 200 or 300 of them all piled in there, all up and down the street. All, county sheriffs, state troopers, everybody. National Guard, everybody's at this thing. This is the street. A whole bunch of protesters here, but it's a panorama on my iPhone 5. Not great. As we marched, we heard the N-word, which I chose not to use today. We heard the N-word every 10 seconds. I'm not exaggerating. In fact, I'm probably under-exaggerating. I'm not kidding. This dude was chanting KKK the whole time with a sign that says, "Can't fix stupid, note the missing apostrophe." You can't make this shit up. That's Charles. Lovely man. The friends that you make on these things, you'll never make them again. It's unbelievable. Turn that frown upside down. Talk about trivializing the death of your fellow Americans. Turn that frown upside down. We also had supporters along the way. Probably 1 out of every 4 people was a supporter, so 25%. And if you think about it, they're putting their butts on the line. People who are supporters in the middle of all that, they live there. Pretty good stuff. This man was a pastor. He came with his son, brought us Starbucks, and we prayed. I'll tell you, I've never prayed as much as I have in my life when I'm doing this stuff. It's awesome. The NAACP literally taught me how to pray. This is President Brooks right here. That's Christina, one of the revolutionaries that talked about the poem. Quincy, Quinn. Anthony Witherspoon is the pastor at the church where we were staying. Missionary D. Friends for life. This was lovely. I'll tell you, when you see something like this, when you're thinking, oh God, what is that sign going to say? Really lifts your spirit. This was in a town called Lynn, and this woman, completely on her own, with a little white sign, Black Lives Matter on it. That takes guts. I guarantee you she has paid some sort of price for that in her neighborhood. I also got, during the march, about 1,000 friend requests, and very quickly they realized I could not accept them because of this. This person just randomly friended me. I thought, oh, sure. And she says, hey, why are you guys marching? What do you mean? What? I see videos talking about matching, perfect, through Rosebud, Missouri. Google Journey for Justice, Ferguson and Jefferson. Oh, that's depressing. I thought it was for, oh, you can't see. Oh, well. You can't quite see, we're cut off. I thought it was for an actual cause. I unfriended that person. I realized, oh, that's not a friend. That's a meanie. I thought it was for an actual cause. Okay. This is Deb Guanati and her black son. She, right outside of Rosebud, which you'll learn about here in a minute, pulled over her van, jumped out, weeping. She's been raising this young man in a part of the world where it's very difficult for a white woman to raise a young black man. It's virtually impossible. President Brooks stopped at every single supporter along the way, hugged them, prayed with them. You know, we literally had to wrench him away from people. If you want to know what a great man looks like, it looks just like that. This man is truly amazing. He is going to make a difference. Okay. So Rosebud, Missouri, population 417. 8 o'clock, yeah. When we arrived in Rosebud, it's about halfway through the journey, they were blocking the road. Arms linked together, and they were not going to let us pass. So we had to spend about 3 hours negotiating with the sheriff, who said, we're not going to escort you, we're just going to observe. And eventually President Brooks, who's about this big, tiny little dude, sheriff is about my size, big dude, said, do your job. Turned around, and we marched through. All right? On the way, we saw this thing, we saw all sorts of signs. Shoot thieves, because that's what you do. This, and this. This lady followed us through town, pulled over, and held up this sign multiple times. Yeah, I know, it's hard to believe. That word, we heard it over and over and over. I'm used to it now. And this is the video that Quincy took. One thing that's kind of amazing about that video is you don't hear the N-word one time. There's a longer video that you can find, again, on my YouTube. You can hear it plenty there. Okay, this was laid in the street, you know, malt liquor, melon, fried chicken. These guys. I'm gonna have to speed up because it's getting late. This is a pretty cool picture. Welcome to Rosebud, all this for one dead. Quite a welcome. All right, so, gonna move through. The reason I have a picture of a bridge here is this is the Gasconade River. And after Rosebud, we caught wind. We had a couple of KKK infiltrators who we knew they were KKK very quickly because they were freaking weird. Okay? KKK people are weird. Like, that's the only word I can come up with. We caught wind that they planned on stopping our march right here. Why do you think they planned on stopping the march right here? Nowhere to go. We wanted to avoid this. Okay? So, Woke up at 5 in the morning, me and a couple of the Michigan boys and the DOJ and Jonathan McKinney got to the bridge before they showed up, and we got out of there. One thing that's great about the NAACP is they know how to fight, but they also know how to evade. Why fight with the KKK when you don't have to, right? Okay, this is us marching, 5 in the morning. Cold, man, and we're tired. Here we are, 6 miles from Jefferson City. We're supposed to get there at noon on a Saturday. What time do you think we got there? 11:55 a.m. Okay? If anybody in here knows what CPT stands for, well, we proved them wrong. And it was raining, snow, sleet, not comfortable. Beautiful shot coming in. That's me. President Brooks giving a speech. And I was going to play a video of what was going on inside of there. But there's not enough time. I'm going to end with a poem. And then we'll have our Q&A. This is The Lion. Looking back across my shoulder, the road before us boring through the emerald green hills of middle America, I saw him through the semi-blue windshield of the Trailways charter bus that held our weary marchers. President, Reverend, Attorney at Law, Cornell William Brooke. Erect in the front seat, scarf thrust across his eyes, head thrown back against the rest, the dark fold of skin across his neck exposed to the air. His white teeth, a white child, could shatter so easily. His mouth wildly agape in the way only of a man fiercely sleeping. And I knew there, beneath the glory of it all, that here was a man to be loved. So that's the presentation. Do we have time to take a Q&A? I mean, if you guys have to leave, that's cool, but for those of you who don't,
we are going to have a little reception out in the Martha Miller Center to continue this conversation. So if not everybody maybe will get to ask their questions now, but I know Andrew will be happy to answer them later. Can we have 1 or 2 people who want to ask a question, and then we'll move out to the rotunda? Could you use the mic so that we can catch it on the video?
I guess the thing I always wonder about this kind of activism is when you haven't, like us being white, when you haven't experienced this kind of racism before, like, I guess I always feel like, how do you feel like you have some, like, I don't want to say right, because, you know, this is sort of like a duty, like, to stand with everyone, like, but where does that sort of, like, do you ever face criticism, I guess, from, like, okay.
Yeah.
And I guess, like, what is an appropriate, like, measure of action when you want to be showing solidarity and support, but not be standing up and standing on top of other voices as a white person, I guess.
Well, what I would say is the trick is to just go and do what you're told. Just be a good soldier and shut up. Just keep your mouth shut and just do what you're told. That's all I did. I just went and just did what I told. Slowly became a leader in the group because it made sense, because we needed to solve some problems and I had some ideas and they listened. But just go and just show up, be quiet, and do what you're asked to do. And if they ask you to leave, if people don't want you there, then go home. Cry a little bit and then try again, you know. The black community wants people of all colors to be part of this. I mean, this is nothing new. One thing I want to say about this is, while I grew up in a racist neighborhood, I went off to college to Virginia Tech, which is 5% black, not exactly diverse, and then went on with the rest of my life, which is in America, which is extraordinarily segregated. Just look around the room. It's ridiculous. We desegregated ourselves and then resegregated ourselves all over again. So I forgot about how bad it was. I was truly traumatized by this experience. So that's something to be aware of. It is traumatizing. Now I feel better, but it took a while. So the answer is just do it. It's not, I walked into the Canfield Apartments completely just like, hey, I'm some white dude, and everybody embraced me. I started marching with the NAACP. They had no idea who I was, and by the end of that day, I was part of the family. And now, I mean, I truly have a family that is this core group of people.
One more question.
Yeah. Sorry, it took a little too long. We're not going to have a lot of time for questions in here. But seriously, afterward, and then afterward, let's go to a bar or something and keep the conversation going. Because I need a beer after this.
So, as a white man,
Yeah.
how can you tell other white people to be an appropriate ally without, like, not being an ally because you feel guilty, and not being an ally because you feel obligated, but being an ally because you want to be one?
Well, if you feel guilty, first off, I don't know that there's any reason to feel guilty. You know, it's an understandable feeling, but I don't know there's any reason to feel guilt. This is something that's been sewn into our national consciousness and our national structure for, you know, since the beginning, right? You know, what I would say is if you are disturbed by what's going on and you think it's wrong, then go do it. Is that a good answer? I mean, that's what I think. Ask questions. And when people get tired of you asking questions, stop asking questions. Be quiet. Just do what you're asked to do. And if you get to a point where you're uncomfortable, stop. You know, you're just a person. And again, there are other opportunities. I think that's a really important thing. If you go out and you don't have a great experience, it's fine. Trust me, there will be other opportunities. This isn't going to end. It's probably never going to end. But we can get better, hopefully.
I do hope that you will take your questions.
We'll do one more, one final one? Yeah, let's do it.
First off, I just want to say I'm so proud of you, and like, I hope one day that I could just experience what you have.
You
like,
can.
This touched me so.
You can do it tomorrow.
Yes. And I still here in college, you know, to figure out what I want to do with like stuff like this. But my question is, how did you overcome the fears of standing up to police and government and just rude people? And how did you overcome the trauma that you saw?
Okay, so the first part, you know, my mom, when I was a kid, I got bullied pretty bad as a kid, because you remember that sweet picture of that little nice boy. What happened? Yeah. I got bullied a lot, and I was nice. I didn't really know what to do. And my mom, remember, she said, you know, when you go into school, you need to visualize that you have armor on. Okay? And I remember, I'm glad you asked this question, because I forgot about this. I need to tell my mom this. When we got to Rosebud, and we knew we were going to be marching, we didn't know, man, we didn't know what was going to happen. Like, we really thought this, you know, this could be it. This could be our lives. And I remember, I didn't put on armor, but I visualized a little box, and I put my fear inside of it, and I shut it, and I threw it away. And held hands with my friend Jillian, a professor at Kennesaw State University, and we just went. So you just put it away. The trauma, you can't just put away. The trauma, you know, I dealt with like anything else that's trauma. I see a psychologist, I talk to my wife, I write about it, I talk to my friends, like Jonathan McKinney, about it. And I'm getting pretty close to putting it in that box and throwing it away, but it's not there yet. But the thing I want to say about trauma man, you could experience trauma getting on an airplane or driving down the interstate. You can't avoid it. You might as well go ahead and face it. And you can do something right now. There's nothing stopping you. Thank you very much.
I do thank you for your attendance. I thank Andrew. And if this is one of the most timely, important conversations we can be having, I encourage you to continue the conversation. I challenge you to raise the bar of the conversations that are happening on our campus and in our community. And I want to say one more thing. Silence is consent. So engage in conversation. Be good listeners. And start with the conversation tonight out in the Martha Miller Center. We'll see you out there. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you again.